Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Mem in Bava Kama, as we learn again for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael on the Sunnah Batzar B'Sifya. We're about 10 lines down on the page at the 2 dots. Son of an Apatrupus. Apatrupus, we learned yesterday, an Apatrupus, that means a guardian takes care of Yisomim, and they have animals, and the animals did damage. Mishalman men Aliyah. So we had, whose Aliyah is it? So is it when they have to pay for the animals in Mu'ed? Do they pay out of the Yisomim's assets or out of their own assets and then recover them later? So we said this far for paying out of their Yisomim's assets, because otherwise nobody will want to accept guardianship. The other sheet is that we see over here is that they pay it out of themselves, and then they'll collect it later from the Yitzomim when they get older. Just have to keep their receipts, as we know, right? They pay from all their general assets, the animals in Mu'ed. This is not a chiddush. We already saw this yesterday. The chiddush is a misham and kofer. If an animal under their charge, because they are responsible now for the children, for the yisomim, and the animal kills a person, they don't pay kofer. The animal, of course, is killed if you know which animal it was, but they don't pay kofer. The kofer, which is the value of the person that was killed. We'll see. You pay the value of the person who was killed, or the person who did, or the value of the mazik, the owner of the animal, but they don't pay kofer. And the svara for that would be that the Gemara is going to say, Montana Kufr, Montana, who's the author of this? It says that they don't pay kofer. It says kufr is kapara, because kofer, the ransom that you pay when your animal kills somebody, the ransom you pay is really for an atonement for the owner. The asmi la b'nei kapara. Since they're in charge of the yisomim are not kapara, they're under bar mitzvah, so they don't need an atonement. They're not responsible for anything, even for their own actions, certainly not for the actions of their animal. So that's the svara why they don't pay kofer. Another svara brought down in the Rishonim is that, again, if you would say they have to be responsible to pay the value of the person that an animal under their charge kills, they won't want to accept any guardianship. They don't want to take you. They don't want that responsibility. So, but the svara over here is the Gemara brings down is that kufr kapara. The asma kapara, they don't read it kapara. Amar Chista, who is this author? It says Montana that kufr is a kapara. Who's the author that when you pay the ransom for your animal killing somebody, when you pay that value, and since Yisomim are not b'nei kapara, they don't have to pay. Who is the author of that idea that kofar is really a kapara? It's an atonement, like the word implies. Kofar kapara, atonement. Amar Chista b'shua v'Rav Shapiro. It's a machlokas, but it goes according to Bishmuel, the son of Rav Meir Shapiro. When an animal kills somebody, you have to pay, the owner of the animal has to pay the nizik's family the value. Whose value? To pay nizik. Tanakam says it's the value of the person that was killed, whatever his value was on the market. You have to reimburse his family. No. To pay mazik, it's the value of the mazik. Now, what's this for? Why should it be the value of the mazik? You killed this guy, your animal killed this guy, pay what he's worth. Why pay the value of the mazik? My love, this is a machlokes. Rabbanan Savi from a mona. The rabbis say that what? The rabbis who say that you pay the value of the nizik is because you have to pay what it was worth. Like it's like if you damage. If I smashed up your car, it's worth 10,000. I got to pay 10,000. I killed a person. My animal killed a person. He's worth 100,000. Pay 100,000. You just pay the value. No, kufr kapara. The kofar you pay is a ransom for you. You, meaning the owner of the animal who killed, it's your responsibility. You were negligent. So that's the svara. Maybe that's the machlokas. One says that kofar is value of the person that was killed because you're paying just like damages, and one says no, kofar sekapara, the value of the person who did the hezek, the one who owned the animal. It's an atonement for him. Maybe that's the machlokas over here. Is kofar a kapara? Is kofar simply the value of the damage? Everybody holds that kofar is a kapara as the name implies. Kofar, ransom that you pay, is a kapara for the mazik, for being negligent, not guarding his animal. Rabbanan say, yeah, it's a kapara, but you still have to pay the value of the nizik. We pay according to the value of the mazik. What's the svara? Why is this far? Why you pay the value of the nizik? My time at Rabbanan. And nemer shisa lamata, and nemer shisa lamala. It says lamala, meaning kasher yushas alav. Kasher yushas alav. When it talks about two men are fighting and one man hit the other one's wife and she lost the baby, she was pregnant. It says kasher yushas alav. They were talking about the value of the child. The Mevlados, the value of the child, the value of the damage. So there it says Kasha Yushas Alav, and here it says in Kofar Yushas Alav, the same lotion of Yushas, which is like an assessment or putting it on, laying on. Yushas as it would put on him. So just like over there, it's the value of the Nizik. You pay the value of the dead babies. Afkan ben a Nizik. That's the svar of the Tanakama. But really, Kofar is a kapara. It is a kapara. But you pay the value of the Nizik because based on Yushas. Rabbi Shmuel Baruch Shem Baruch said no. V'nasan Pidyo Nafshoksid. It says when you pay the Kofar, you pay the Pidyon, the redeeming. You're redeeming yourself with this ransom. Nafsho, the one who's paying. Ksiv. The Rabbanan say, Ein Pidyon Nafshoksid. It says you pay for the ransom of yourself, or the redeeming yourself. Miu kishamina ben nizik shminan. But when he says how much you pay, we pay according to the nizik based on the Xerashav of Yushas Yusef. Period. Mishavachle Rava Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was praised. Rava was talking to Rav Nachman, and he was praising the Rav Acha bar Yaakov. He was praising Rav Acha bar Yaakov. He says, Rav Nachman, we've got this student over here, Rav Acha bar Yaakov. He's Adam Gadol. He's a great man, big Talmud Chacham. Amalei. So Rav Nachman said to Rava, when he comes by, when he visits you, bring him to me. You say this guy's a big Talmud Chacham, and he's very good. You know what? When he comes to you, bring him to me. When he came to him, Amalei, ask me any question. Let me see what you can try to stump me. Ask me questions. So boy, he asked him this question. Shor shall shnei shutban. Let's say a shore belonged to two shutbas. We'll assume the animals are mu'ed now. Talk later on if he's a tam does he be chatzi kofer. But Pashim Shad, he was a mu'ed and he killed somebody, but he belonged to two people. He had two owners, two partners. How do they pay kofer? Mishalim Haikov, does each one pay the full value? The whole kofer, whatever you say, mazik or nizik, but if each one pays off, it says kofer echad rachman of losh kofer. Why should you say each pay kofer for high kofer? It says kofer echad, you pay kofer. Nasan pidyon afsham kofer echad rachman of that you don't pay two kofers. So where do you get two kofers from? High chatzik of so maybe each one should pay half. Kofer shalom rachman of chatzik kofer. It says you pay kofer. It doesn't say each one pays a chatzik kofer. There'd be 100 partners, each one pays 100. So this question stumped Rav Nachman. As he was sitting and thinking about this question, pondering the question, Amalei, so this Rav Acha bar Yaakov, who was quite the student, said to him, I'll have another question. Tanan, Chayve Erech and Mamashkanosan. It says, what is Erech? Erech is if you give the value of a person to the base of Mikdash, but not the value that he's worth on the market. The Torah gives you a specific amount. Like if the man is, let's say, a 30-year-old man, so he gives the maximum amount, 50 shekels, whatever. If it's a woman, 30 shekels, whatever. The Torah in Vayikra gives us the whole cheshbon, the whole chart of what you give to the base Mikdash. And so when I say I give the erech, not the value, not the demay. If I say demay, that's what he's worth on the market. If I say erech, that lashon, that estimation it's an estimate. I'm saying his value. Erech means value, giving the value that the Torah specifies for each person given to the base of Mikdash. Let's say a person donated that money, says, I pledge this amount of money to the base of Mikdash, erech of this guy. Mamashkanosan, he doesn't come up with the money right away. We seize the money from him. We take a collateral from him until he pays. Right? Bezin does that. Let's say a person's chayav a carbon, did some sin, b'shoga, it's chayav a carbon. For that we don't take a pledge from him, force him, so to speak, into seize his property until he pays. Chayav kofer. What about his chayav kofer? What will you compare it to? Compare it to a chatas, to a carbon, or you compare it to erechim? It's chayav kofer. Mike, even the kaparu, since it's an atonement for him, as we establish, everybody agrees that kofer is a kapara. Kachatas v'asham, that means like chatas v'asham. He takes it very seriously. It's a carbon. I need atonement. Therefore, you don't have to take a mashkin from him. You don't have to take a pledge or a collateral from him because he's going to take it seriously anyway. Just like he wants to bring his carbon, he's going to take it seriously. The same thing maybe here you say with when he's chayiv kofer, since it's an atonement, just like a chatzas hashem, you don't have to take a pledge from him because he needs the kapara. He'll take it seriously. Oh, Dilma, you say he doesn't give this kofer. Who does he give it to? The chatos, so the car goes to the base of Mikdash. Erchin goes to the base of Mikdash, right? This doesn't go to the base of Mikdash. This kofer he gives to the family. He's giving it to his associate, to his neighbor. Kim l'chavri, the boy messes, he has to give it to him. Mamon, it's simply mamon v'lo l'gbo. It's simply mamon, since he doesn't see it as an atonement. It is an atonement, as we said, kofer's a kapara, but he sees it as money that I owe that family. I owe that money to the freedmans who's. Pardon? Goes to Nizik, right? But since it's going to a family, it's going to individuals, it's not going to the base of Mikdash, he doesn't take it as seriously. It doesn't go to base of Mikdash. It's not so serious, and therefore, maybe you should take a pledge from him, just like you would take a pledge from Erichin. Erichin goes to the base of Mikdash, yet you might not take it so seriously. So is it like Erichin or is it like Chatas? You say it's Chatas and Kapara, he's going to give it anyway, you don't have to worry about it, he'll take it seriously. Or you say, no, since he's giving it to an individual, therefore he won't take it so seriously, and therefore you should take a pledge. Or boy, mashka, you have to take mashka. Or you could say, the fact is, I didn't sin. My animal killed the guy. It's my property damage killed that person. It's not so serious to me. Boy, mashka, you have to take a mashkin. So this was the other question that he asked, that this Rav Acha Bar Yaakov posed to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said, Shafkan, leave me, I'm still stuck on the first question. You asked me the first question, if partners own an animal and the animal kills, how do you work the kofar? They each pay kofar? One kofar, each pay half. It doesn't say half, it says whole. So he was stumped on that question. We couldn't even deal with this next question. Tanu Rabbanim. Shalo b'cheskestam. We have the shoel, the borrower, you have the owner and the borrower, right? The borrower borrowed an animal, and he assumed that it was a tam. It turned out that animal was a mu'ay. Now, this guy is a borrower. First of all, he has full responsibility to return the animal, right? If the animal had an accident, he's responsible for that. But over here, and now the animal, while it was in the possession of the borrower, did some damage. They split it. Now the assumption here is, well, he was the borrower assumed that he was a tam, so therefore he wasn't maybe as careful, but he still has to pay chatzinezik as if it's a tam. Whereas the fact is that the animal is a mu'ay. It is a mu'ay. Therefore, you have to pay full damages. So who pays? You split it. Now this is going to be problematic. Gemara is going to discuss this. Why? How does it work? What are the mechanics of chatzi? They each pay chatzinezik. That's one case. Who have the base show? Let's say a different case. Second case. The Reisha is where he borrowed it, assuming that it was a tam, and he found out that it was a mu'id, and then it did damage. They split it. Let's say part of it's chatzinezik. Well, chatzinezik would be knas, right? So that's the question. It's not knas because he's a mu'id. You have to pay the whole thing. Yes, if you hold that that the chatzinezik and koma omei, yeah, that emphasis is tam. But either way, each has to pay half. And the second case is who had the base show. Let's say he borrowed it. While he borrowed it, it became a mu'ay. When he borrowed it, it was a tam. It hadn't done much damage, right? Not at all. But then while the shoel had it, it gored 3 times with proof, etc., and it became a mu'ay there. What happens there? So who had the base shoel? Now he returned it to the owner. After he returned it to the owner, right, it did damage. He only pays half nesek because it goes the idea that rishus is mashana. When he returned it back to the owner, no, it was a mu'id while it was in the shoal's rishus. Now he returned it to the owner, it becomes a tam again. That rishus is mashana. Yeah, but the first case is mashma that rishus is not mashana, right? This we'll see in a minute. So Gemara's going to talk about that. The shoel potter miklum. Once the shoel, it was a mu'id while it was in the shoal's rishus and bar's rishus. He returned it to the balam, and now it did damage. The balam pays chatzinezik because it's a tam, but the shoal is out of the picture. He doesn't pay anything. Omer Mar, let's analyze these two cases. The first case, shoel b'cheskes tam b'nim tzemuay, balam misham chatzinezik b'shom ha'deish pay FMI. Why should the shoel pay anything? Le malay tur sheila aryelo shila. I borrowed an ox. I didn't know that the animal was a mu'ay. I borrowed it assuming that it was a tam. Turns out it's a mu'ay. I didn't want to borrow a lion. I was borrowing an ox. I shouldn't have. The whole thing, you fooled me. You're right. That would be a good ballad, but here it's speaking about Shunakan. He knew he did damage. In other words, he assumed he knew it was a damaging animal. The animal had done damage. So he can't get out of it and say, I thought I was borrowing an ox, not a lion. He knew that. And so if he didn't know it, it would be a good time, but he knew it. The name of Tom Sheila Mush, but you still say, fine, I borrowed a Tom, not a Muay. I knew it was damaged, but I didn't know that it's a Muay. Shimdom Malay, so what? So what? So you thought it was a Tom? You're only you only pay half anyway. What did we say? He borrowed it in the state that it was, and now he borrowed in the state that it was a Tom, and it turned out that it's a Muay, right? So he says So he didn't. It's not like he didn't know anything. He knew that it had done them some damage. He didn't know that it was a mu'ay. So he says, I didn't bar. I thought I was borrowing a tam, not a mu'ay. The answer is, so what? We're not holding you responsible to pay the full damage. You only pay half anyway. Let's say it was a tam, so you pay half. So eat tam. If it was a tam, palganiska boss shumei. You only have to pay half. Hashanam is some buck. We're only asking to pay palganis. You only have to pay half. The name Malay on the last line on the page. The name Malay. Let the borrower say itama have a mishtal megufo. If it was a tam, I'd only have to pay out. If I wouldn't have to pay out all my assets, he's really a mu'ay, and you're saying each has to pay half, right? So if it would be a tam, I'd only have to pay out of the goof. I wouldn't have to pay out my mishum Malay. So what? So at lav tur boss shlumididi. You have to make up good and give me a good animal back. Either way, you have to give me the good animal back. And here, Tosas points out, interestingly, the last Tosas says in Tomer, yeah, Vitam, he's only paying what the animal's worth. The animal's worth $10, not $100. Even when we say that he pays half, he only pays a half like a tam would pay, meaning out of the value of the animal. If the animal's worth $10 and the damage was $200, he doesn't have to pay. And what do we say? Each pays $100. He only has to pay the value of the animal, like he would pay via tam. But for name Malay, but let him say I shouldn't pay anything. I shouldn't pay anything. Itamave, if it would be a tam, and it's not a tam now. But I borrowed it under false pretenses. I thought it was a tam. Now it turns out it's a mu'ay. So you say, fine, just pay whatever you would pay as a tam. Pay me whatever you would have paid there. Yes, but if it were a tam, I could have been mode in potter. Mode of a knas is potter. We hold right that chatzin ezek of Karen of a short tam is a knas. I could have been mode in potter. Even if you say that the chatzin ezek is mamon, we don't pass it that way. But if you say that, they might say itam have I would have sent the animal into the swamp. In other words, I would have told the animal to get lost and wouldn't have to pay because you pay only out of the goof of the animal. The animal's not here. The animal's lost or stolen. Would have paid. I could have gotten out of it. Don't tell me now that I have to pay because at the end of the day, the animal's a mu'ay, right? So they say each has to pay half, but you only pay half as if it's a tam out of the value of what the value is worth. Yes, but if it's a tam, I could have been moda and been potzer, or I could have sent the animal away and paid nothing. My skin going to actim beitina v'tafse. Here it's speaking. He can't argue that because the Bezdin had seized the animal and prosecuted him. In other words, it's too late to be moda. Speaking about where the Bezdin seized the animal, so he can't be moda now. And he grabbed it, so you can't say I would have sent it away or I would have been moda. So why, if that's the case, why should the owner pay anything? Namely, you said, listen, you caused my animal to be grabbed. You caused my animal. You allowed the Bezdin to take it over. Now I have no argument. If it would have been my animal, I could have made an argument for it in my possession. Now the animal's in your possession. You can't get out of it by saying, hey, it was a tom, you would have been moda, this and that. You put me in a bad position. I shouldn't have to pay anything. Why should name late? You put me in this bad position. You caused my animal to be grabbed. Right? Why can't? So you put me in an uncomfortable position that I'm not arguing because Bezdin has the animal. So what? Let's say I would have given it back to you. Let's say I wouldn't have given it. Bezdin wouldn't have grabbed it. Had I given it back to you, they would have taken it out of you too. What kind of an argument is that? You put it. I allowed the Bezdin to seize it. So what? Let's say they wouldn't have seized it. Let's say I would have returned it to you. They still would have come after you. B'nai Malay could say, yeah, but had you given it back to me, also I would have put it in an agam. I would have put it away, and I wouldn't have to pay. It's mashma over here that they both pay chatzin ezek out of the goof of the animal because he says, had you given it back to me, I would have sent the animal away, and they wouldn't have been able to make any claim. That's not an answer. The whole thing seems, the question seems, it almost seems preposterous. If we say the animal's a mu'id and he has to pay nesek shalom, each pays half, right? So, okay, fine. The borrower gets a dispensation because he thought it was a tam, so he should only pay out of the value of the animal. But the owner who knew it was a mu'id, he should have to pay the full amount. What are you talking about? You would have sent the animal into Agam, you would have, it's cost to go to Bezdin. Once they have a claim against you, you have to pay out of all your assets. I would have to pay. So let's say he has assets, that's fine. So these arguments are going like from one ridiculous thing to the next. He's saying, well, that's only a good argument if he has assets. Let's say the owner of the animal has no assets. All he could take is the animal, right? The animal he doesn't have. His argument is the animal could have run. I could have pushed the animal away. Fine. But even if you push the animal away, they come after you. Oh, I have no assets. Because he could say, the borrower could say, just like I, the borrower, I'm obligated to return your animal or the value thereof. I'm also responsible to pay the one who did the damage. Meaning, B is the borrower. He owes the money to A, right? A owes the money to C, who is the nizik. So if B owes money to A and A owes to C, B owes the money to C too. That's the rule that we have. In other words, the borrower could say, just like I'm obligated to you, I'm also obligated to the nizik. The Tanya of Nasr, or take a similar case. A owes money to B and B owes money to C. You take the money from A and give it directly to C. So here too, the owner cannot say, well, I don't have any assets. Yeah, the animal, I could have made the animal disappear, and I have no assets. He can't collect anything from me. My asset was the animal. The animal's gone, and I have nothing. You can't collect from me, because the borrower could say, yeah, but he can come to me. I owe money to you, and you owe money to the nizik, so they'll come after me. How do we know that that's the case? That if A owes to B and B owes to C, that A, they can take the money from A and give it directly to C. Right? Because you give it to the one who he's responsible to, and he's responsible for that one. So therefore, that's the argument, and that takes care of the first case of why they each have to pay half. Because they each have to pay half because the borrower, he could claim he thought it was a tom. Fine, so pay like a tom. Pay like a tom. You thought that you could, if it was a tom, I could have been moda. Speaking where the weird case where Bezdin had already seized it and prosecuted the guy. And the owner could also has no excuse, because the owner could say, the owner knew he was a mu'ed, and if he did damage, he has to pay at least half that he would pay the extra half, the second half, as a mu'ed. And if he has no money, then they'll come after the borrower instead, because he owes him the money, he has to make good on it. So therefore, that's what happens in the first case. What about the second case? Who had the base shoel? If the animal became a mu'ed while it was in the borrower's possession, returned to the balam. The animal is now becomes a tom again. It was a tom when it was originally the owner's rishus. When he gave it to the shoel, it became a mu'ed degored 3 times with witnesses, etc. And now he gave it back to the balam, becomes a tom again. The shoel potter becomes shoel doesn't pay anything. Sefer rishus mishanas. On the sefer you see that by changing rishus, changing possession, right, changing ownership effectively, when the borrower gave it back to the owner, it's like that changes the whole situation, and the animal is now guarded differently, and he becomes a tom again. Reisha, so we see over here. So in the sefer we see that rishus mishana, reisha rishus ain't a mishana, because we said in the reisha when the animal maybe was thought to be a tom, but it was really a mu'ed, and he gave it to the borrower, he's still a mu'ed. Rabbi Yochanan Tabrat, you're right. It's a kasha. It's a break. Misha shanazu lo shanazu. The reisha holds that rishus is not mishana. The sefer holds rishus mishana. It's student from rabbis. Rabbi Omar, but a reisha rishus and mishana sefer nami rishus and mishana. Rabbi says no. Since in the reisha rishus is not mishana, that when the borrower took it and it was really a mu'ed, it stays a mu'ed. Sefer also rishus is ain't mishana. So if it's ain't mishana, why does it become a tam? The sefer had a time mishum the amrlei, because the owner could say lav kol kaminach the yaris le turoi. You're not empowered to make my animal a Torah. How negligent were you? I gave you an animal that was a decent animal, and you were so negligent that you allowed it to go out and gore. You can't turn my animal into a mu'ed. He has that power to say it. In other words, he could say, it's my animal. You borrowed it. You have no authority and no power to make it into a tam. So he's saying, really, it's just not mishana. It's just that, it's just that you're not empowered to do that. So you turned it into a mu'ed. I say it's not a mu'ed. Again, it's a difficult answer, because it's either mishana or it's not. He's saying rishus is not mishana. The sefer also rishus is not mishana. And if it was a mu'ed in the borrower's possession, giving it back to another person does not necessarily change it. Here it's different, because he says you're not empowered. It's my animal. You can't change the status of my animal. Again, this far that we said, if you say rishus ain't a mishana, rishus mishana. Even if you say rishus ain't a mishana, maybe that's where you're talking with an owner and a borrower, but not if Yankel sold it to Shmerel. if they sold it, there you would presume you would say Rishus Mashana. But Papamar made a Sefer Rishus Mashana, since in the Sefer Rishus Mashana, when the borrower gives it back, it becomes a Tam again. Reishanami Rishus Mashana, Reish is also Mashana. So if that's the case for Reisha Haina Tam, what's the reason in Reisha where it was unknown to the borrower, but it was already a mu'ed and it stays a mu'ed, even though it went into the borrower's Rishus? Haina Tam Rishim B'Komak Mishaholah Shem Ba'alav Alav. Wherever it goes, it still goes with the name of the owner. In other words, the owner's name, it was a mu'ed before, and it stays a mu'ed because the borrower did not change its status. Sort of like we said before, the answer before about where the owner is telling the borrower in the sefer where he became a mu'ed in the borrower's rishus, you're not empowered to change. He says, I'm still the owner. But this doesn't really jive that well with the previous case. If you say that the wherever he goes, it still goes by the name of the owner. So if that's the case, and therefore that's the reason in the ratio why if he was a mu'ed before, he's a mu'ed afterwards. So then if he became a mu'ed in the last case where he became a mu'ed while he was in the borrower's rishus, it's still the name of the owner on it, right? So how does that work? We're going back to this one. So it's a little bit, the svars don't really jive that well. It's easier to say that it's two different shitas. The Reisha is Rishus Ein Mishana, and the Sefer Rishus is Mishana. These answers that you gave sort of don't work together, don't go together. Short sign in Chayv Misa. Now the Mishnah said that if you have a stadium animal, a stadium ox, a bullfighter, or whatever, a bullfight, where the animal is encouraged to kill, then he's not Chayiv Misa if he kills. Not chayiv, normally an animal kills Chayiv Skila. Here he's not, because the pasuk is Kigach V'lo Sheikhichu. Now we have a machlokas here. What about this animal that gored and killed somebody? Can you use them as a carbon now? There are animals that you cannot use as a carbon, even if the animal is unblemished. We know an animal we use as a carbon, a short kesef is used as a carbon, has to be unblemished. That we know. But there are also some cases where you can't use an animal. So here the question arises: Can you use an animal that gored in the stadium? It was encouraged to kill. It wasn't just a wild animal. They instigated it, right? They encouraged it to kill. Now, and it killed. Can you use it as a carbon now? Rav Amar Kasher, Shmuel says apostle. You can't. Rav Amar Kasher, Anusa, the animal was forced. It was against its will. Shmuel Amar Apostle, Haray never Baver. But the fact is, it did kill somebody, and Never was the Meisvei. When you're dealing with a carbon, it says Mina Behema, Shor Kesavaiski Vale, right? Goes on to say, Shor Kesav, he brings up, how do you bring a carbon? Min. No, this is really not, I'm sorry, I'm reading, that was from Emor. This is from the beginning. Mina Behema, when you bring a carbon, Ola, whatever, it says Mina Behema, not all animals, some animals. Lotzias Rova, that's an ear, but you can't use an animal that bestiality was committed with. Mina Bakar, from the cattle, Lotzias and Evid, you can't use an animal that was worshipped as a Vodazara. Minatzon, from the flocks. Again, the word min says not all of them. So you can't use, the first one excludes bestiality, the second one excludes Avodah Zarah, third one excludes Lotzias and Muktzah, who was set aside for Avodah Zarah, right? That you don't use those animals. Uminatzon, Lotzias and to exclude an animal that gored and killed somebody. Okay, you can't use an animal like that. Amar Shimon, in them Arova, so you can't use an animal that killed somebody. Yes, but what about our case? So what do you see? Amar Shimon, in the Marova Laman Emar Noga. Why did the pasuk have to tell me we exclude both a rova, a bestiality, and we exclude a gore? In the Marova, say one of them. Well, no, if you can't use one, you can't use another one. Why? Because rova has characteristics that don't apply to a noga. Rova also. If an animal committed bestiality with a person, not only is the person killed, but the animal is killed. Animal, you say, what sin did it do? The animal doesn't have any brains, doesn't have its own mind. The answer is that people, it's a bezoin because a person was nichshal through him, and therefore he should be killed. Or also people shouldn't go around saying, oh, that's the animal that slept with Yankel or whatever, or with Rivka. So asaba onus karatzon. So by rova asaba karatzon. So there you say, even if you did it against the animal's will, it's like ratzon. You kill the animal either way. So that has that quality. Nogach lo asaba ratzon. I know if we don't say it. Nogach we say kigach lo shekichu. If it was, we didn't say that if the animal killed somebody in the stadium in a bullfight, we don't say you kill the animal. So it's not the same. So if I'd only say maybe rova, we're more machmer, even though this is karatzon there, you can't use it as a carbon. Nogach, I wouldn't say that. Okay, nogach, the nogach has an additional chomer mishalim kofar. If an animal kills somebody, the owner has to pay kofar, as we've learned. Rova and mishalim is kofar. If the animal committed bestiality, they don't pay kofar. We're going to talk about that in a minute. What do you mean pay kofar? If he committed bestiality, where is the death involved? Kofar is for death. We'll see that in a minute. The rova and mishalim is kofar. Therefore, they have to kill both. Tani means rova asaba onus karatzon. By rova, onus is like ratzon, right? Nogach lo asaba onus karatzon. The mayach, so when we say nogach, onus is not like ratzon, doesn't it mean lav carbon? Meaning that by rova, whether onus is karatzon, not by rova, if an animal is killed, what are you talking about? Onus karatzon, you can't use as a carbon. What kind of a carbon use if you have to kill the animal? The answer is, let's say the owner just came himself and said, my animal committed bestiality with somebody, right? Or there weren't Adam. You only kill the animal if there was Adam. If there was no Adam, so you can't kill the animal, but you know that it was a rova. Can't use as a carbon. But nogach, we said that's our question. Nogach lo asabon skarasan. So what do you mean that you didn't make on skarasan? Doesn't mean like for a carbon, meaning that if the animal killed on purpose, you wouldn't use it as a carbon, right? Lotzi as a nogach, right? We said minutes on lotzi sago. Whereas if it's an onus, maybe you would use it as a carbon, proving like a baya who said you could. It's kosher to use the animal. Slow l'ktola. We say onus skarasan means do you kill the animal? If the animal did it on its own, you kill the animal. If the animal was enticed to kill, then you don't. Then he was forced, and you don't kill him. That's what it means. And therefore, we have no proof to the case of carbon. Because here when we say that nogach does not have the quality of onus karatzon, we don't mean in terms of carbon. We mean in terms of killing. It's mistava that way. The carbon. If you say carbon, that for a carbon we say that what that onus is not karatzon. When nogach lo asabon karatzon lav onus deksiv lo ratzon deksiv. How do you know that? By rova, we know it says roba. You kill the animal no matter what. If you committed bestiality with a person, if a person enticed, seduced an animal and slept with the animal, you kill the animal also. By nogach, it says kiigach, right? And it says lo asab karatzon. How do you know? The pasuk doesn't talk about onus or ratzon when it comes to yigach, when it comes to either kofar, when it comes to paying damages, etc., etc. So therefore, we don't know what the pasuk is speaking about. So how do you assume by nogach lo asab karatzon? The answer is lo asab karatzon in terms of pain, in terms of damages. Ki yigach, it says yigach lo yichichu. But in terms of carbon, how would you know that lo asab when it comes to carbon? What's the source to tell me that for bringing it as a carbon? Onus is not like ratzon. That ratzon you can't bring as a carbon. Onus, if the animal committed killed with against its will or did damage that killed against its will, that you can't use it as a carbon. How do you know? When it comes to carbon, it doesn't say onus or ratzon. It just says uminatzon lo tzias hanogach. Therefore, the onus karatzon is in terms of nezek. It's in terms of nezek. It says kiigach. The animal damaged on purpose, you pay. If it was forced, you don't pay. Therefore, we can't prove it from here. And anyway, we'll see that the halacha seems to be like a baye, that you could use it as a carbon. Omer mar. We said, but if an animal kills, gores and kills, he pays kofar. The owner pays kofar. If he committed bestiality, he doesn't pay kofar. If the animal committed bestiality with a woman and killed her thereby, so what's the difference if he killed her by having BO with her or killing her by goring her? Either way, the animal killed the woman. So why shouldn't he pay kofar? He killed her. What? He committed bestiality and he didn't kill her, so why would there be kofar? So the reason you don't pay kofar is mishum lo katla. What are you seeing over here? Rova doesn't pay kofar. What are you talking about? If by committing bestiality, this woman, this animal attacked, this animal raped a woman and killed her. So why shouldn't he have to pay kofar? He killed her. The same as how he killed her. If he killed her with a knife, he killed her with his horn. If he stepped on her and killed her on purpose, killed on her, he has to pay kofar. The animal killed her. And if he didn't kill her, what kind of kofar is there? The reason you don't pay kofar is because he didn't kill her. He raped her. The animal, let's say, raped this woman, and he didn't kill her. But then they brought her to court. But Katlua, they killed her because they said, he didn't rape you. You did it willingly. And there was Adam. And they killed her. Mao, the same command. It's as if the animal killed her because it was the animal's action that caused her to be killed. Mashma, we don't say that. You don't pay roba. In other words, there's no, if the animal slept with a woman, and then she was killed by the court, you don't have to pay kofar for that. Rava Amar, Lolam the Rava Vakatla. Rava says, no, really, the animal let's say, raped her and killed her. What's the difference if he killed her with a horn or killed her by having her be? He killed her either way. You should pay kofar. Karen Kavas when he killed her with this horn, or the foot, whatever, he meant to kill her. Here he just wanted to rape a woman. He wasn't planning on killing her. So therefore you might say that it's different over here. So this case could be speaking about where the animal did kill her by raping her, but he didn't mean to kill her. And therefore you could say that therefore the robot does not pay kofar. What's the machlokas here? Remember, regel is not chayiv b'shus harabim. But let's say an animal whined into Rishus HaNizik, and Rahman Slan, he stepped on a baby and killed the baby, right? According to Abaye, you would pay kofar. Why? Because Abaye says that Abaye's answer was, Abaye says that it makes no difference if he had intention to kill her or not. Here, the animal, let's say, just walked into somebody else's Rishus, and he stepped on a baby and he killed the baby. According to Abaye, he'd pay kofar because the animal killed the baby. It doesn't depend on his intention out. Rava says no, that maybe it's different than the case where he raped her and killed her because he didn't have kavanah to kill her, therefore he wouldn't pay kofar. The Rava lo misham kofar because he didn't intend to kill. According to Rava, the owner of an animal only pays kofar when the animal killed somebody if he intended to kill, he intended to do damage. Here he didn't intend to do damage. But according to Bias, it makes no difference whether he intended to or not. He would, according to Abaye, you would have to pay the kofar because it doesn't depend on your house. The question simply was, we said according to Abaye, did he kill her or didn't he kill her? He says, well, he didn't really kill her, but the Bezin killed her afterwards. So you might think that you pay kofar. Come on, you don't pay kofar. But if the animal did kill her, you would pay kofar regardless of what his intention was. Rava makes an afkamina whether it was intentional or not. Tani Kavah said Rav, we have a proof, a brisa like Rav, that an animal, a stadium animal, that was enticed to kill and killed, you could still bring it as a korban. Sure, it's stadion, ain't a chayiv misa, but kashal gam mizbeach neshu kamausa. Not only is he not chayiv misa, like our Mishnah said, but it also says you could also bring it as a korban because it's forced. So even though we don't have a proof from it, but we have a brisa, we don't have a proof from a pasuk that way from the psukim, but we have a proof to Rav that an animal that was forced to kill, not only is he not killed for killing somebody, but he's also considered an ones, and you would use him as a korban. What you can't use as a korban is an animal that bestiality was committed with, or avodah zarah was committed with, or was set aside for avodah, or an animal that intentionally gored, that wasn't forced into it, gored on its own. All right, we'll pick up the Mishnah tomorrow. Tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh. Have a good day, everybody. B'surah Tovot.